morning. You guys sound alive today. You feeling alive? Yeah? All right, good. Oh, pinch hitting. It would help if I was good at hitting. No, I'm kidding. It's going to be great. Clarkston campus, I am absolutely delighted to be here with you today. I am. Now, for those of you who are new and you don't know me, like my brother said, my name is Lisa Marsak, and I am a worship and teaching pastor here. However, you may not have seen me over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, and I want you to know that I haven't been on hiatus. I haven't been out in the tropics, like on vacation. I actually have been slated to serve at Goodrich on the worship team, and so I've been there. And I have to tell you, it's been a lot of fun because I've had firsthand chance to watch them grow and develop and see what God wants to do in the Goodrich community. And I believe that our God has really great plans for Goodrich. Do you believe that? And Bridgewood Church gets to be a part of that, which is absolutely amazing. However, when I have moments to sneak back to the OG, it's a good place to be, my friends, to be here at Clarkston and to see your smiling faces. It just does a heart good. Okay, so public service announcement for any of you who feel like 2021 is flying by. Thanksgiving is this week. Are you aware? Anybody else aware? How many of you, by raised hand, would say, I am fully ready, bring it on? I am so proud. Okay, please, someone raise your hand if you're with me and you are in the boat that is not ready. Okay. I feel like over the last couple months, my life has been on warp speed. I'm just flying by. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you not know Thanksgiving is coming? It's always the same Thursday in November every year, that's just the way it is, right? But I feel like it's just caught me off guard. And so I am going to be one of those last minute shoppers who's flying to the grocery store and literally scavenging to find what is left so that I can bring something useful to Thanksgiving dinner. I have to tell you though, I am a little bit relieved because I am not responsible for the turkey. Praise Jesus for that, people, because there are high expectations when it comes to Thanksgiving food, right? I know people who are like, do not mess with my menu. We eat the same thing every year, you know what I mean? And if you go to change it, they freak out. They have expectations. And I refuse to make my family be disappointed in their Thanksgiving because I cooked it. That's how it is. So my husband and I, when we first got married, we had an experience that really helped, how shall I say this, properly set our expectations moving forward in life about what my cooking was going to be like. Typically, when we first got married, we were still in college, and we typically had a lot of simple meals because honestly, that was all we could afford. Let's be real. And so there was one time where I was feeling a little, sassy, and I thought, I'm going to try it. I'm going to pull out the cookbook, and I'm going to wow this man. He's going to be so impressed when he comes home from work. And so I'm thumbing through the book, and I'm like, I don't even have half this stuff, what do I? And I find meatloaf. Now, what in the world was I thinking when I selected meatloaf to be the meal that would wow my husband? But that's what I pick, meatloaf. And I'm going through and I'm getting all the ingredients ready and I'm putting it together. And honestly, I get to the end of the recipe, and I had never seen this before in my young life. And it was like, and then you can pick one of these 3 ingredients and toss that in. And they were ingredients I had heard of, but I have never used nor tasted. I didn't know anything about it. And I'm like, one of them's got to be the secret. So I scour through the spice rack you get at your bridal shower, right? And I find the one that I had out of the 3. And I'm like, I guess we'll just use that. So mix it together, and I pop that bad boy in the oven. And I'm feeling good, guys. I'm feeling so good. The house starts to smell in a good way. And I'm like, thank the Lord, And so I'm just getting all excited. And I know that Sean is going to come home and be like, you have acquired some new culinary skills. This is so impressive. And I had even timed it perfectly, right? 5 minutes before he comes in, I'll be able to pull out my meatloaf masterpiece, right? And so I do. I get to the oven and I pull it out, and the air hits me, and I'm like, oh, the aroma is so good. And I set it down, and I'm just like kind of pacing back and forth, and I'm waiting for Sean to get home, and I'm like, I can't take it. I've got to try it first. And so I stick my fork in, and I put it in my mouth, and I'm like, that is revolting. I was so disappointed in what I had just created. I literally grabbed a piping hot meatloaf and just took it and went and like dumped it straight in the garbage. No sooner do I trash the thing, Sean walks in and he's like, hon, it smells amazing in here. What's for dinner? And I just looked at him and I'm like, McDonald's? And off we went. And I believe that it was a moment where Sean learned really fast that there were going to be some maybe unmet expectations, maybe some disappointments along the way when it came to our future with food. And today, that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about. Be talking about expectations. How sometimes we have them and they go unmet. Sometimes we have expectations and they're absolutely shattered. And then we have to deal with the disappointment that comes as a result of those missed expectations. Now, sometimes in life you have expectations where they're not met, and it's because it's self-inflicted, okay? You have some sort of grand vision for how something is going to turn out, and you have just these great desires, and somewhere along the line, it falls flat, right? For some of you, you might be here today and you were thinking, man, by this point in my life, I really thought my savings account was going to be bigger. I thought that the retirement outlook was going to be better than this. And the reality is that you just spent the things that you were supposed to be saving, right? It was self-inflicted. Things like our Black Friday come and we can't help it. We just got to upgrade to the next iPhone just because it's available, right? And so what the goal was doesn't get met, right? And the Bible actually has a lot to say about expectations. Proverbs 13:12 tells us what happens when we have unmet expectations. It says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, right? When there are expectations and hopes in our lives, and those things don't play out as they were planned, there actually is an impact on us. And on some level, it can leave you heartbroken, if you will. There are other times in our lives when we have expectations about things and it's not self-inflicted, but somebody else inflicted it, right? Somebody else came along and crushed our expectations. And I believe that in a room this size, there are some people here who've experienced something like that, right? For some of us, it could be we had visions of how our relationships would turn out. We had goals and hopes and dreams. Maybe it was for your children, right? You lived your whole life for God. You showed them and you demonstrated what it meant to live wholeheartedly for Jesus. But when they had the chance to choose him on their own, they didn't. And everything in your world just crumbled, right? Whatever the reason might be, you may have walked into this place feeling numb. Maybe even kind of living on autopilot. And instead of living with incredible expectation of what God can do, you're simply existing. And somewhere along the line, that became good enough. John 10:10 says that our God came to give us life, and he came to give us abundant life. And I would dare say that the definition of abundant life is not autopilot, right? John 10:10 goes on to say that, and it warns us that we have an enemy, and he has one goal, and that is to steal and to kill and destroy. And I would like to suggest to you today that there's nothing he wants more than for you to abandon your hopes, for you to give up on your dreams, for you to even have premature funerals for the things that God still has waiting for you. I feel and I would imagine you could agree, that the last about 2 years for us, it has been an ongoing assault against hope. Do you agree with that? Church, COVID came in like a modern day plague, right? And we prayed. The church, Big C, prayed because we know that we have a God who can do it. But things didn't go the way we thought it would, right? We have faced some hard things over the last 2 years. Some of you lost loved ones. Some of you know people who've lost loved ones. I'm in that camp. Some of you know people who've lost businesses. Maybe you've lost a business. Whatever it is, I feel like it's in every facet of life. There has just been the moment where the enemy has aimed up his sights and his target, and he has aimed for our hope. He has aimed for it because he wants to take out our confident expectation on our God, that God would actually move on our behalf, that he would do it for you, that he would do it for me. When we prayed, I know we knew he could do it. I think what we were grappling with is why he didn't move like we thought he could, right? And so in the place where confident expectation once resided, in the midst of the struggle, I feel like disappointment began to set in. And I want you to know that if you are in that boat, you're in the right place today. Because we're going to talk about shattered expectations. And so if you have your Bible, I want you to turn to Luke chapter 24. And if not, our amazing media team is going to have it for you on the screen. And here's the story of two men who were with Jesus, people. Walked with him, saw him face to face, and yet they encountered shattered expectations. We're going to start at verse 13. It says, that very day, two of them were going to a village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking with each other about all these things that had happened. And while they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. He said to them, what is this conversation that you're holding with each other as you walk? And they stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, named Cleopas, by the way, I really like him, answered him, are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened here in these days? And he, Jesus, said to them, what things? And they said to him, concerning Jesus of Nazareth, a man who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And there it is, right? But we had hoped. At one time, they too were expectant, right? Like you and I. At one time, they had carried within them hope that they had found the Messiah, and this Messiah was going to overthrow the Roman oppression that they were living under, and so they opened themselves up to him. They took in his words, and faith began to arise within them, and they followed him, and they saw him do countless miracles. They saw him feed the multitudes. They saw him heal sickness of every form. They saw him raise the dead, my friends, raise the dead. But in a moment, everything that they understood to be true was turned upside down and inside out, right? Nothing made sense to them anymore. These were people who literally gave up their careers and their families to follow him. This was going to be their future king. And instead, they watched him be tortured and then crucified. Everything they were putting their hopes and dreams on, everything they were counting on, was shattered in one day. And so right here in this very small section, of the book of Luke, I feel like we see how our enemy, who loves to steal, kill, and destroy, will use our genuine disappointment as a weapon against us. And the first thing we're going to learn from our text is this, that disappointment can detour you. Verse 13 says, that very day. Well, what day was it, my friends? Does anybody know? It was Resurrection Sunday. Y'all, this was the greatest day in history. Jesus had conquered death, hell, and the grave. His body was no longer in the tomb. And they were leaving. Why? Why were they leaving? I think it's because everything they thought they expected didn't turn out like they thought it was going to, right? They watched their Jesus be crucified instead of made king. Let that sink in for a moment, folks. And we don't have insider information on their intentions or why they were leaving, but I think we can safely assume that disappointment played a part. And that maybe somewhere along the way they got a little lost. Have you ever been lost because of disappointment? My friends, I want you to hear me. Disappointment will take the clarity you thought you had and it will make it fuzzy. Disappointment will disorient you and it will leave you wandering. Am I the only one who relies on a GPS to get them where they need to go? Y'all, I haven't seen a map in decades. I have no clue what they look like or probably even how to read it anymore. My mom and I went to a conference a couple months ago, and it was in a city that I'm not familiar with at all. And on the way there, she was like, well, how are we going to get there? Do you know the way? And I said, I don't have to know the way. This thing tells me everywhere I need to go. Every step of the way, it warns me ahead of time. In half a mile, turn right. Like, I've got it, Mom, it's good. And we drove there, and it was seamless. Everything worked perfectly. Well, we stayed the night at a hotel, and then the next day we went back to the conference, and it was going to take us this back way. At least that's what I assumed as I quickly put the GPS in. And never before in my life have I ever had this happen. But my phone, froze. The whole thing froze. It wouldn't do anything. And so we're moving in the car, driving, and I looked at her and I said, remember that thing I told you about how I don't need to know where I was going? I was wrong. And here was the problem. It froze so bad I couldn't even make a phone call, and I was starting to panic because my go-to is to call Sean. Anytime I get lost, I'm like, babe, I'm somewhere here. Tell me where to go. And he always guides me. And all of a sudden, I panicked. And I was like, Mom, please tell me you have your phone on you. And she did. By the love of Jesus, she did. And we called Sean. He's like, turn your phone off and reset it. Oh, so I hurry up, I reset the phone, then ding, it comes back. And I was like, because I'm like, we are going to be lost. And I have no idea. That kind of panic, when you are so lost that you have no idea what to do next, that's what disappointment can do to you. It can leave you in a place where you feel utterly lost. Disappointment can also diminish your vision. In verses 15 and 16, it says, while they were walking and talking together, Jesus came alongside them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. I have read this story countless times over my journey with Jesus. And every time I've read it, I just assumed it was a divine interaction of God, and God kept them from seeing Jesus walk with them. But as I was reading it this time, it kind of hit me. Could it be that it's just as much practical as it is spiritual? That maybe it was a combination of the two? And somewhere in the midst of them being lost, disappointment settled upon them like a deep fog. And they could barely see 3 feet in front of them. My friends, that is what disappointment can do to you. And I don't suggest it because I've risen above it. I suggest it because I've lived it. There's been times when I have faced disappointment that has been so thick and so heavy, I can't even see my hands in front of me. How do I ever possibly see the hope that is standing right in front of me when I feel surrounded? But there are moments when we become blinded to his presence because of the despair that we feel. It's in those moments of disillusionment when we can't see anything but just 3 feet in front of us. And in those moments, those are the moments where you can only see what you've lost. Those are the moments where you can only see what you feel like you haven't received yet in your waiting. And if we're not careful, the enemy will take a very legitimate and real disappointment and he will twist it on you. He will twist it in a way that causes you to question what should be foundational to you. Like maybe, let's say, the goodness of God, right? And we will begin to have thoughts. And then those thoughts will become words that we speak. And we'll begin to say things like, God, how could you have let this happen to me? I thought that you were good. And that leads us to our next point, because disappointment will dare you to doubt. When we can't see from our own earthly vantage point, disappointment has no problem grabbing you by the hand and leading you down its own path. It will. And I don't know if you caught it earlier, but verse 21 says this, and they had hoped. That's past tense, my friends. That means they no longer are hoping. They are without hope anymore. And my friends, I believe that that's what makes this strategy of the enemy so stealthy. Because I don't think that many of us really believe that disappointment is lethal to our faith walk. Because honestly, disappointment happens so often, right? But this is what I believe he does. See, the minor disappointments don't always take us out right away. But he is very careful to take each one and kind of link them together till he forms a chain that he can use to strangle out our confidence in God. It dares us to doubt that our God actually is who he says he is, and that he will actually do what he says he will do. And from their disappointment, if we let it, we'll let it drown out the voice of truth. If we pick back up in verse 22, it says, and besides all of this is Cleopas talking, it's now the third day since this happened, since Jesus died. And moreover, some of the women said they saw angels who said he was alive. They were on this unexpected road, and they struggled to hear truth. They struggled to hear a good report. And I believe that when we get lost in our disappointment, we can be tempted to let the voice of disappointment be louder than the voice of truth. Do you know that disappointment has a voice? I promise you, my friends, it's on level 10 all day long. It never whispers. It screams at you. It shouts at you. Look how he's failed you. He wasn't faithful to you. Another reality would be this, that when we're disappointed, we have a tendency to pull back from God. We might not get into the word to read the written voice, right? The truth that he has for us. Because we cannot comprehend why we are facing the things that we have faced. But I want you to know this morning that if you have faced disappointment, you are not alone. You're actually in a room full of people that have faced disappointment a time or two. But the enemy would love to sell you on the idea that you're the only one, or that you're the only one who's faced this kind of hard. Hear me today. You are not alone. So what do we do in the midst of our struggle? What do we do when the disappointment is real and it is legitimate? Well, the text tells us what we can do. It says, remember that Jesus is with you on the detour. He isn't afraid of where you've been going. Verse 15 says, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. He isn't embarrassed by you. He isn't mad at you for those moments when you feel like you are suffering. He isn't shaking a holy finger in disgust at you saying, how could you? That's not our God. No, when we're lost and we're confused, he walks with us. He comes with us. Does that do something for you to know that even when you've spun around and you've lost all sight of him, he finds you and he walks with you? He is a good God that travels the road with us. And isn't that the way he's always been? He's always the one to initiate. That's why he was the one who sent a babe in a manger so that he could be God with us, that he never had to be apart from us. He was making a way. And so in our moments when our expectations have not been met, when they have been frustrated and downright shattered, your God draws near to you. He draws near. What else does the text say? The text says that we need to tell him about it. When we are disappointed, we need to tell him about it. Verse 17 says, and he said to them, so what is this conversation that you've been holding? The God of the universe, who knows all things, asks them, so what are you talking about? My friends, that wasn't because he didn't know what was going on. That was because he was inviting them into conversation. He was making a space for them to be able to tell him what was going on in their lives. And I really love Cleopas because he's authentic and he's raw, right? Did you catch his response? He's like, are you the only one that doesn't know? Have you ever said that to God? Do you even know what's going on right now in my life, in my circumstances? Do you have a clue, oh God? I've been there. And I will not hide behind a facade that because I'm the speaker, you need to, that somehow my life is just great. Y'all, me and God have had words. Words that have come out like this. Do you see me? With tears streaming down my face because honestly, I questioned if he really did. Jesus is inviting us to tell him about our disappointment. He wants you to tell him. It's almost like he was saying, I know you guys have talked about it amongst yourselves long enough, but why don't you tell me? And then he prods him a little more and he's like, no, tell me like what things? And I love that about Jesus because he won't take the surface. He's like, I want your heart. Tell me why it really hurts. Tell me what you really think. He wants us to tell him the hard things because his shoulders are big enough to handle all of our disappointments, even if our disappointments are with him. I believe this is a moment where Jesus invites them into lament. Christine Kane, in her book, How Did I Get Here, describes lament this way. She says, true lament is a form of prayer and surrender. It's a form of worship because it is turning to God instead of away from God. My friends, sometimes I think that we think in order to be a good, faith-filled Christian, we need to appear perfect to everybody around us, right? It's why we come in and someone says, how are you doing today? And we say, fine, when on the inside, we're dying. When on the inside, we're lost. But we'll say fine, right? We'll cover it up. And I want you to know that God never intended you to ignore your pain, to ignore your frustrations, to ignore your disappointments. The Psalms are full of laments, and they give us permission to let out the things that are bothering us. It's knowing that when we do that, it's not a sign of doubt, my friends, it's a sign of trust. Because when we can tell him all of that, we're doing it knowing he will not turn his back on us, right? And it's not only just about lament isn't just about pouring it out. Lament is about surrendering to him in it. It's saying, I don't understand, but I will trust you with it. And I'm not sure what you came in with or where the enemy might be trying to rip you off. But I believe that God is inviting us this morning to talk to him about it. And then he wants to take us back to truth. If you move on to verse 27, it says, and beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he, Jesus, interpreted to them in all the scriptures things concerning himself. He helped them to see what they couldn't see. He helped them to see what they were missing. And what it was is that he was helping them to see who he was. My friends, their hopes and their expectations were not misplaced. He was the Messiah. The issue is that he wasn't going to accomplish the mission the way they thought he would, right? And Bridgewood, I got to tell you, there's times in my life where he has gone about things that I've been like, I don't see it, and I don't understand why. And I have a lot of questions. But I know one thing. He will be faithful to his character, and he will be faithful to his word. This is what I know. I know that he is God with us, because Matthew chapter 1:23 says his name will be called Emmanuel, God with us. This I know, that he changes not. In Hebrews it says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. This I know, when nothing seems good, he is good and he does good. That is Psalm 119:68. And this I know, that he is working all things, even the disappointing things, for our good and his glory. It probably won't surprise you to know that pastors are not exempt from pain. We're not exempt or immune from experiences that leave us feeling shattered. 2 days ago, we buried one of my dearest friends. He wasn't just any friend. He was my younger brother's best friend. He was like family to us. He was like family to a lot of our staff. For a short season, he attended Bridgewood and he worked with our kids. And kids loved him. He was a magnet for children. And the one thing that I know about Jason was that he thrived in telling kids about Jesus in the most creative ways possible. And it's my son, who's now running sound, who was impacted by Jason's investment in him. And it's my nephew, who's running the streaming right now, who was under Jason's leadership. And I owe him a lot. But 4 weeks ago, he came down with COVID. And we knew he had some health issues that would potentially put him at greater risk. And we began to pray. Because we know that our God heals and he makes a way where there seems to be no way. But we weren't the only ones praying. We had an army of people praying for him, and we believed. We believed there were so many reasons why it made sense here for God to see him through and for him to recover. And 2 of those reasons are right there. Because those kids need their dad. And our expectation was fully and completely that God would revive his body and make him well. But what I envisioned for Jason didn't happen. And when the phone call came, my heart just kind of shattered. I think it shattered a lot of hearts. But this I know, that Psalm 34:18 says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. I won't read it, I'll save the time, but Jesus and the boys keep walking, and they're nearing Emmaus, and they urge him to come stay with him, and Jesus agrees, and they sit down for dinner. And Jesus, like he had done a bunch of times before, he took the bread, he blessed it, and then he broke it, and he gave it to them, and instantly they could finally see that their hope had been with them all along. It was Jesus. They got the revelation that they needed to hope again. And my friends, that's the end, is to let him help you to hope again. Autopilot is not abundant life. Numb is not abundant life. We need to let him breathe and move and let him fill us and revive us so that we can hope again. And this morning, this is my prayer, that you would see hope has been with you all along too. John 14:16 says, before Jesus is leaving the earth, he tells his disciples, he says, I will ask the Father. I will ask him to send a helper to be with you. And that word helper is the word parakletos. And it means someone who comes alongside. And do you see how ridiculously beautiful that is? Because just like Jesus found those two on the road in their disappointment, and he came alongside him, we have been given a comforter who lives within us to come alongside of us. To come alongside of us, to be the one who is the guide when we are lost. He is the one to help us when disappointment sets in like a fog. He is the one who anchors us when we feel like we are drifting. He is the one who comes and speaks truth to our hearts that are weary. And I believe that God has just come today to draw near to us once again. Would you stand with me? Our good God, I believe, is inviting us into a moment where we can just tell him about it. No holds bars, unafraid just to say, God, this is where I'm at, and this is how I feel, and I feel lost, and would you come, and would you help me, and would you minister to this heart that is broken, because I want to hope again. And so with your eyes closed, your heads bowed, I just want to pose the question to you out there today. Is there anybody here who might be in that place where you are just struggling in the thick of disappointment from expectations that have shattered you? Is there anyone here today? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I've asked the band to come and play a song at the end so that we can have some minutes. Because see, church, we could rush out of here and we could miss the moment. Or we can lock eyes with Jesus right here, right now, and know that he has come alongside of us. And so if that was you who raised your hand, you can come to the altar. We'll have people who will pray with you. Or maybe you just need to sit in your seats and spend time talking with him. But I believe he is here now and he wants to minister. And so I want to pray over you, and then after I pray, the band is going to sing, and then afterwards, Brandon will come up and close. But hear me today, he is close to the brokenhearted. This I know, he is close to the brokenhearted, and he will save those who are crushed in spirit. So Father, I thank you today, God, for your word. I thank you, Lord, for its raw honesty, Jesus, that you never promised us that our life would be perfect and without trouble, but you said when we would face trouble that you would draw near to us, that you would be close to us, God. And I pray, God, that today you would revive our hearts. Lord, our expectation and our hope is not misplaced when we put it in you, God. But our confidence is sure that you will be who you say you are, and that you will do what you say you will do. God, I thank you. I thank you for who you are, Jesus. And we worship you, God, in Jesus' name.
Thank you, Lisa, for that word today. And you know, church, I pray that you have been filled with hope today, because the enemy will never let an opportunity go to waste to discourage you and try to defeat you. And so we have a God who not only created you, but created the world and holds it right in his hands. And he is walking and is near to you right now. And so would you reach out to him? Would you let him encourage you today and fill you with hope? We would love to hear about it, and we would love to come alongside of you in this journey. And so if you need prayer, if you need encouragement today, would you reach out to us? So whether you drop something in the chat right now, our volunteers and our online pastors would love to come alongside of you. If you would like to reach out to us and let us know where you're at on this journey, there are multiple ways on the screen right now that you can get in contact with us. And all we want to do is come alongside of you in this journey of faith. We want to encourage you. We want to give you tools that are going to build you up and encourage you in this journey that you are walking. And so would you do that for us today? As always, you can find out everything that's going on around here at bridgewoodchurch.com/info. And so whether it's events or it's service times, you can hop on and find out everything that's going on right here at Bridgewood Church. Once again, thank you for joining with us. We love you, we're praying for you, and you can find us right back here next week for Bridgewood Online.